The National Desk, America's News, now.
Try to stay home if you can. We're really encouraging people to limit non-essential travel.
Right now, a dangerous storm is slamming the West Coast, putting tens of millions of Americans at risk. How it's impacting communities and where it's headed to next. Then a bipartisan bill meant to enhance border security just released, but its prospects look grim, what those for and against are saying. And another problem with Boeing's 737 planes has been discovered, how big of a safety risk it poses and how the company plans to fix it. This is the National Desk, America's News. Now, we're glad you're with us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and right now, roughly 38 million people in the West are under flood alerts and 34 million under wind alerts as an intense, slow-moving storm batters California. More than 350,000 residents are without power as heavy rain, flooding, and damaging winds continue after record-breaking rainfall just yesterday. The storm is moving south, the worst of it shifting from Los Angeles to San Diego and continuing there through tomorrow. Crews have rescued several people. At least one person has died. Several schools are closed due to road closures. Mudslides and landslides are widespread in the LA area. The storm has caused significant flight delays and cancellations. Heavy to moderate rain is forecast through the middle of the week. Several feet of snow are expected for higher elevations of the Sierra Nevada. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Saudi Arabia on his fifth visit to the Middle East since the October 7th attacks in Israel. Blinken's goals are to get an agreement together for all hostages in the Israel-Hamas war to be released and to set up a humanitarian pause for people in Gaza. Blinken is also set to visit Egypt, Qatar, Israel, and the West Bank through the 8th. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has the latest from Washington.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken back in the Middle East. Landing in Riyadh Monday, top of mind as he meets with Saudi leaders, a pending deal between Israel and Hamas that could pause fighting and release some of the roughly 100 remaining hostages, as many as 6 Americans among them.
We cannot, with any clear sense, say the exact number of hostages, but we know that there are many.
As of now, the most viable means to that end appears to be what's being called the Paris proposal.
Hamas understand that basically the only meaningful card that they have right now, the only real leverage that they have, are the hostages.
Ari Perliger, an expert on extremist groups, says Hamas wants these talks, brokered with help from Qatar, Egypt, and the U.S., to mark the final stage of the war. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he insists on absolute victory. Families of the hostages continue to push Israeli officials to prioritize bringing home their loved ones over the military offensive in Gaza to eliminate Hamas, which has left more than 27,000 dead, according to the Gaza Health Ministry under the Hamas-run government.
It is clear that the threat to their lives is increasing the more time they stay there, and there's plenty of hostages that already were killed. My belief is that they are still being held underground. The pictures that were released shows that the hostages are probably suffering from malnutrition.
White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the ball, so to speak, is in Hamas's court to respond to the latest hostage release framework. Meanwhile, complicating matters are ongoing clashes in the region between U.S. forces and the Houthis, which, like Hamas, are backed by Iran. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar.
The trip comes as the potential for a broader conflict increases. The U.S. warning of further action against Iran-backed militias if they continue their attacks. This morning, a rocket was launched at U.S. and coalition forces at mission support site Euphrates in Syria. A drone attack targeted a base housing U.S. troops in Syria last night, killing at least 6 fighters from the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. There were no reported casualties among U.S. troops. An independent review group selected by the United Nations will investigate UNRWA, which provides aid to Palestinians in Gaza, following accusations that some of its employees in Gaza were involved in Hamas's October 7th attack. The group will start its review on February 14th, and an interim report is expected by late March. A Michigan jury is now deliberating in the case against Jennifer Crumbley. 45-year-old Crumbley could go to prison for involuntary manslaughter in the 2021 shooting deaths of 4 students. Prosecutors argue she failed to inform school officials that the family owned guns. Her son Ethan is serving a life sentence after pleading guilty to shooting 11 people, killing 4. The maximum sentence for involuntary manslaughter is 15 years in prison. We now know about another issue with some of Boeing's 737 jets. The company's CEO wrote in a letter to employees that a worker at its supplier reported the fuselages may have misdrilled holes. The CEO says the potential condition is not an immediate safety issue. According to the head of Boeing, 50 planes that have not been delivered yet will need repairs. The House plans to vote on its impeachment resolution against DHS Secretary Mayorkas tomorrow, according to CNN, citing a GOP source. This after the House Homeland Security Committee advanced the resolution last week. Republicans claim Mayorkas has committed high crimes and misdemeanors for mishandling the border situation. Democrats say the evidence does not suggest that's the case. Tonight, the list of Republicans opposed to a bipartisan border deal is growing. They are speaking out after a small group of senators worked for months with the White House to come up with what some call the most sweeping proposals to our immigration system in modern history. National correspondent Christine Frizzell lays out the debate taking shape on Capitol Hill.
The new normal of record numbers of migrants arriving to the southern border met with new legislation to try to curb the chaos. The $118 billion emergency security bill, which also includes aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, is meant to make the U.S. immigration system faster and stronger, according to one of its authors.
Changes the asylum laws, builds more wall, adds more detention beds, adds more deportation flights, changes this 10-year backlog that we're currently in now to weeks before people are actually deported. That's what the bill really does.
President Joe Biden and top Democrats also calling for swift passage of the bill.
This bill says America will step up to the plate and defend itself.
But the proposed sweeping changes to immigration policy may be already upended by politics. The celebrated bipartisan support in the Senate not reflected on the other side of the Capitol. Republican leaders say the bill is dead on arrival in the House, with complaints it gives too much money to non-governmental groups who care for migrants and increases the numbers of those allowed asylum and doesn't go far enough to crack down. But some accusing them of not wanting to help the president get the border under control, because it's seen as one of his greatest weaknesses in the 2024 election. Former President Trump among the most outspoken critics. Still, some Democrats say the bill is too Trump-like and makes it too difficult for many to qualify for asylum. This debate playing out here on Capitol Hill as officials in Texas have already taken over some parts of its border, with other border states struggling to keep up. Full Measure's Cheryl Atkinson heard about those struggles firsthand during a recent trip to Eagle Pass, Texas.
To process one just individual takes me like 45 minutes, one individual. You're talking about a group of 30 or something like that. Where are you going to put them? I don't have the space in my jail nor the time.
Time those pushing the new bill say is running out. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
The firefighter who stood with President George W. Bush in the rubble of the World Trade Centers has died. Bob Beckwith was a retired FDNY firefighter at the time of the terrorist attacks, but pulled on his old uniform and raced to Ground Zero to help search for survivors. He was standing on top of a burned-out fire truck when Bush climbed up and delivered an emotional speech. It's not clear how he died, although last year he told reporters he had malignant skin cancer and other health problems. He was 91 years old. King Charles III has cancer. Buckingham Palace said today that it was found during surgery to correct an enlarged prostate. Charles is postponing his public duties while he receives treatment. The nature of his cancer and treatment has not been revealed, except that it is not prostate cancer. The 75-year-old Brit ascended to the throne in September 2022 after the death of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. Coming up next, as we get closer to the November election, new poll numbers are in and they could have the current president concerned. Then new numbers show the cost of car insurance is surging. What's driving this increase and what you can do to lower the expense. Then an in-depth look at alarming new research showing how social media use can impact the brains of kids and teens. We're back in 90 seconds. Fresh off his win in South Carolina, President Biden is now setting his sights on Nevada ahead of tomorrow's primary there. He campaigned in the state over the weekend along with fellow candidates Marianne Williamson and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. As far as the general election goes, new data shows President Biden's re-election team may have their work cut out for them. Here's national correspondent Kayla Gaskins.
Former President Trump gaining ground.
Now at 5 points, this is the biggest lead NBC has ever had in 16 polls for Donald Trump.
9 months out from Election Day, and just 37% of voters approve of Biden, placing him in a weaker position than George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and even Donald Trump during their incumbent runs for a second term. Biden is also struggling with his base.
He's really got to be concerned about the fact that he is not polling well with the people who really delivered the presidency to him in 2020, specifically people of color and persons under 30 years old.
Trump and Biden are statistically tied among Hispanics, which alarms Democrats. It's been 20 years since a Republican presidential candidate has seen this level of support. The data shows President Biden struggling on some key issues. When it comes to handling the economy, 55% prefer Donald Trump, just 33% prefer President Biden. Biden doing even worse when it comes to handling securing the border. That's where 57% prefer Donald Trump, just 22% trust Biden. The bipartisan border security bill going through Congress could help boost voters' confidence in Biden on immigration, Belt points out, even if Senate Republicans block it.
He has the ability to say, look, I was going to work with the Republicans to give them exactly what they wanted, and they wouldn't work with me.
Belt predicts we'll also hear Biden talk a lot about abortion as he works to win back younger voters. The president has bigger hurdles. Only 23% believe he has the physical and mental health to do the job, a 15-point slip from 2020. But there is a wild card lurking in the wings. Data shows if Trump is convicted, he loses support. That scenario gives Biden a slight but important lead for the rematch. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
By the numbers, gas prices are on the rise. According to AAA, the average U.S. price of a gallon of gas is $3.15. That's up 4 cents from last Monday's average and 6 cents from a month ago. But $3.15 is still about 30 cents less than the average cost a year ago. Car insurance premiums will soar again in 2024. Take a look. New data from Bankrate released today shows the national average will jump 26% from last year. That's an extra $500 a year for full coverage. There are several reasons for the surge, including inflation.
Your insurance premium kind of stays locked at a rate for 6 to 12 months, depending on your contract. And it's also paying for losses that we experienced earlier, right? So even though inflation is slowing down, your premiums are based off of prior losses mostly. And some things have stayed elevated. The cost of car repairs, 20% higher now than they were before the pandemic.
Martin says now would be a good time to shop for a new policy. You can also talk to your agent about increasing your deductible and focus on improving your credit and your driving record. McDonald's says conflicts in the Middle East are affecting its business. The fast food chain says growing tensions have hurt sales in that region. Sales for the part of McDonald's business that includes most of their Middle East restaurants only grew 0.7% last quarter, compared to over 16% a year ago. The CEO says the company remains confident. The parent company of the social media app Snapchat is laying off around 500 people. A regulatory filing by Snap Inc. today said this will affect 10% of its global full-time employees. The company said it plans to restructure, which could cost up to $75 million. The layoffs come after Snap cut around 1,200 jobs in 2022. The trial for a major antitrust lawsuit against Google will begin September 9th, according to new court documents. The Justice Department and some states accuse the tech giant of unfair competition. Google argues the case is based on a flawed argument. It's the first antitrust case against a large tech firm under this administration. Also, new research shows the active ingredient in the weight loss drug Zepbound and the diabetes drug Mounjaro improves blood pressure. The study, funded by Eli Lilly and published in the journal Hypertension, found tirzepatide greatly lowers blood pressure in people who are overweight or obese. It isn't clear if that effect was from the medication itself or the associated weight loss. Both Super Bowl teams, they are now in Las Vegas. The Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers landed at Harry Reid International Airport yesterday. Today is opening night for the Super Bowl, the traditional media day for players to do interviews. The Super Bowl kicks off Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time at Allegiant Stadium. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. From migrants arrested after a string of home burglaries in Ohio to Washington State residents fed up with graffiti in their neighborhoods, we're taking the pulse of America. But we start with a Florida officer killed while chasing a suspected criminal.
It's a smile that touched the hearts of many. Florida Highway Patrol Trooper Zachary Fink, pictured here with his mother, is being hailed a hero. Officials say it was around 2:40 in the morning when a St. Lucie County deputy chased a white Kia going more than twice the speed limit, but the deputy crashed. That's when Trooper Fink stepped in.
The suspect vehicle made a U-turn on I-95 to travel the wrong way.
In an attempt to continue to apprehend the subject and or warn unsuspecting motorists of the immediate danger in the area, turned also with the vehicle and unfortunately turned into the immediate path of a semi-tractor trailer, which struck the left driver's side of his patrol car.
The driver of the semi-truck died at the scene. Trooper Fink was rushed to a hospital where he was later pronounced dead.
Police arrested 3 men, Amaro Diaz, Miguel Maturana, and Benjamin Martinez. They are suspected to be part of an organized burglary ring out of South America that has been targeting high-end homes across the country, including dozens in Indian Hill and other wealthy greater Cincinnati neighborhoods.
They knew we were gone. They apparently were watching us.
We've been reporting for a year on the burglary network originating in Chile, organized crime that began in 2014 when the U.S. State Department added Chile to its visa waiver program, one of 40 countries from which tourists can come to the U.S. for up to 90 days without a visa. Just 2 weeks after their arrest, a judge let Diaz and Martinez out of jail on their own recognizance with electronic monitors. The next day, they cut off their anklets, and according to this tourist burglar expert, they likely left the country.
As you collect your valuables and send them back home, you continue until you're either caught or recalled by your handler.
It's dirty. It looks dirty. The city looks dirty to me with all the graffiti.
It's hard to miss graffiti on buildings, street signs, public transportation.
It's kind of all over the city.
For the first time in more than 7 months, the city of Seattle is free to prosecute people for graffiti and similar forms of vandalism, after a federal court of appeals reversed a lower court ruling that put the city's graffiti ordinance on hold back in June.
Graffiti is not a victimless crime. It's often described as such, but it isn't. It's a big impact on businesses, on neighborhoods.
City Attorney Ann Davison says graffiti is a massive problem for the city, costing taxpayers, businesses, and residents millions of dollars a year while jeopardizing the overall safety.
As people walk around and see so much graffiti around, it all gives us that sense that this place is not cared for, that other laws won't be noticed if they are broken.
Coming up next here on the National Desk, new information about how social media affects young people, particularly their brain development. We'll be right back. Tonight, some alarming discoveries about the impact of social media on young people. We are learning of more evidence of its effects on the brain development. Spotlight on America's Christine Frizzell investigates.
Got one more of these. It's a rare break for 17-year-old Olivia Mead, working on healthy habits in the kitchen. She is the first to admit her relationship with social media is not so healthy.
Like most of the day, like when I'm awake, like I'm usually on social media.
It's an addiction she is open about, and with which her mom, Carrie, sometimes grows impatient.
I think this is probably familiar for many parents of teenagers. It's like, put your phone down at the dinner table. Can you put your phone down while I'm talking to you?
Neurologically, like there is a need to answer it. Like your brain gets triggered and it's like.
Why do you feel like you have to answer right away?
Because I don't know, it's just like a habit almost.
That habit, one reason the social media company Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, is being sued for harnessing technologies to, quote, entice, engage, and ultimately ensnare youth and teens, adding that Meta has repeatedly misled the public about the substantial dangers of its social media platforms.
They have put our kids at risk, they've lied about it, and we're going to hold them accountable.
New Jersey Attorney General Matt Platkin is one of 41 attorneys general to sign on to the lawsuit. Last year, a 14-year-old in his state, Adriana Kush, died by suicide a day after a video of her getting attacked in her school went viral. And multiple New Jersey school districts have also filed lawsuits against social media companies, blaming them for students' worsening mental health.
They've put products out there that cause significant harm to residents. And who ends up footing that bill? The taxpayers.
New data on the issue are piling up, including one study published in the journal Nature detailing how some with varying degrees of social network site addictions had reduced gray matter volumes in the amygdala, a part of the brain that helps control emotions and behavior.
Fully myelinated frontal lobe is not finished myelinating until you're about 25.
Dr. Mark Argentiano is a neurosurgeon in New Jersey.
Atrophy is a wasting away of people who are using social media in a way that would be described as addictive.
So when you say social media is changing kids' brains, you're not just talking about the behavioral aspect, you're talking about physically could be changing the kids' brains.
Yes.
Since the lawsuit was filed, Meta has made changes, including more restrictive content control for teens, and promising now when people search for terms related to suicide, self-harm, and eating disorders, we'll start hiding related results and direct them to resources for help. For Olivia Mead, it's simply a habit she is, for now, not ready to break, even when she heads off to college next year.
Obviously, I'm gonna go to my classes, I'm gonna do my homework. One of the things that like relaxes me is just like laying in bed and scrolling on my phone.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Christine Frizzau.
Coming up next, hear how you can win $1 million from Burger King in their newest contest. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Burger King is offering a $1 million prize for its new $1 million Whopper contest. People can submit recipes for the classic sandwich with custom topping combinations. Applicants can select up to 8 toppings for their dream Whopper. They'll then get an AI preview of the burger. The deadline for entries is March 17th. And now I'm hungry. Gotta go get dinner now. That's going to do it for us on this edition of the National Desk. We invite you again to join us this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. Just check your local listings. I'm Dee Dee Gatton here in Washington. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tonight.